Welcome to Business Digest Radio, Southern Colorado's source for business, policy, economics, workforce, and innovation. Brought to you by Colorado Media Group. Here's your host, Dirk Hobbs.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Business Digest radio program. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs, and I just want to welcome you to a great conversation today that we're going to have with Travas Deal, CEO of the Colorado Springs Utilities. And before we get to him, I just want to go over kind of some of the top things that we've seen this week in Southern Colorado's business and economic environment. Right now, underway is the 41st Space Symposium out at the Broadmoor, and absolutely incredible attendance. Members from the space community and the Department of Defense for respective countries, including our own. Probably close to 15,000 folks out at the Broadmoor utilizing that property, that convention center, and the conversations, folks, are literally out of this world. We also spent some time at Catalyst Campus this week, where we got to know 6 finalists in the cohort, the spring cohort at Catalyst Campus for innovation and the DoD sector. I got to tell you, there are some companies that are doing things, folks, that you will not even believe are happening. But the drone components, the big data centers, the big data libraries that are coming online, and how they can utilize that data and information structure to the frontline warfighter within an instant is absolutely tremendous. So we're excited. We're going to present these 6 companies to you in the May edition of the Digest, and we hope you look at that, because what we're creating here is a pretty substantial and significant infrastructure with this DoD and cyber and quantum discussion overall. Colorado Springs, Southern Colorado in general, from Douglas County south to Trinidad, are really incubating hundreds of these companies that continue to emerge out of these tech centers and out of the DoD construct itself, which is fascinating because they're starting to feed off each other and grow. They're becoming bona fide clusters here in Southern Colorado, and that's really exciting news for our economic development. But we've got still a lot of challenges ahead of us, and we continue to work on those as well, openly, as a network of professionals trying to mitigate the impacts of those different factors that are causing us consternation, frankly, like affordable housing, access to childcare, and other things like that. So we're not leaving those things behind. We're having open discussions throughout the community, and some very smart people are at the table to work on those problems. And speaking of smart individuals working on a lot of challenges in the region, I want to welcome Travas Deal, CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Dirk. Thank you.
I'm glad you're here, man. It's good to see you.
Happy to always see you.
Yes, and you still got some hair left.
A little bit. I keep her short, though. Yeah.
And the stress and everything that goes with this job is absolutely tremendous. So I'm glad you're here. I know a lot of community leaders and business leaders are glad you're here, because you've got your hands on a lot of dials right now that we're working with here in Southern Colorado, not the least of which is a very dry winter. We'll get into that downstream. But first, I want to check in on you. How are you?
Doing good.
Okay.
Doing good. Yeah. Life's good. It got grandbaby number 4 on the way here in June. So, yeah, it's all good. So
glad to have you here. And number 4, so you've got 3 now out and about, and they're keeping you running. What are the age ranges here?
6 all the way down to a year and a half old. Then this one here will be the newest one. So 3 are back in Indiana, but this one here is close, about a half mile from me.
Okay. Yeah. So you're going to get to hold one.
Exactly.
On a regular basis.
Yeah.
Very good. Now, how are you? I don't know about you. I'm about to have my second grandchild.
Oh, congrats.
Okay. I'm about to have my second grandchild, right? My daughter-in-law. Yeah. So I can do the holding for a little bit, and then I got to pass it over. Yeah. Are you that way, or you want to hang in there?
It sort of depends. I have a lot of fun with them. They start running around, so I can teach them a lot of bad stuff at that point.
Me too. That's where I'm strongest too. Well, glad you're with us, and thank you, because we've got a heavy agenda, and I want to get to it, ladies and gentlemen, because he's got a lot of real estate to cover, a lot of topics. So give us an executive summary, and then we'll try to delve down in kind of an executive summary of the state of the utilities in a nutshell.
Yeah, exciting. We're still continuing to build for our future. And I think that's the thing, is the point I try to get across, especially, to our constituents, our business industry, and those is, we have to be out in front of where the needs are. So we have a lot of projects, we can touch on today, but, us being a Forest Service utility company, it's sort of a one-stop shop for those businesses, sort of coming in, and it makes it nice, but you got to make sure you remain focused on those. It's one of those you got to sort of keep pushing in all areas. So we have really impactful projects going on all four of those commodities, and a lot of those we'll touch on today. And a lot of times energy takes the focus on a lot of this, but we have a lot of work we're doing on the gas side, water and wastewater, of course, as well. And so exciting to bring some updates to the community today.
Well, let's do it. Let's dive in with the Southwest Power Pool. Yeah. Explain what that is, and then what you see when you talk about that.
Yeah, so utility companies, predominantly in the Midwest to East, have really always been in an organized market, and an organized market on the cost of generation, but also a regional transmission market. So those gives you the ability to tap into pools of power that you don't currently have right now. So we've been in the process, I pointed us toward the Southwest Power Pool, a couple of years ago, and it's taken a while to get to that point. We just went live April 1st. So what a market does is we have to have enough generation in our portfolio to cover what our needs are. But then you put that into the market. Then the generation that is the lowest cost at the time is generated to supply the needs of everybody in that market. So really, it's a very good tool to try to manage and keep prices down, for the end users. What it also allows us to do is have more transmission and interconnect into a broader range of areas of generation that we don't currently have. So Colorado Springs Utilities is pretty much like everybody else. We used to have vertical infrastructure. So I tell everybody, back in the day, people wanted to build close to the power plants. Mm-hmm. So Drake, for example, was sort of the heartbeat of the city for many years.
You bet.
And so, but as things change now, the transmission is sort of the pathway, the key. So I tell everybody, transmission's like the interstates, when it gets into electric generation. So with an organized regional transmission authority is it gets you interconnects that you don't have, accessibility transmission you don't have. So then you can look at large scale projects, joint projects, bilateral contracts. So we have the ability now, we call it's like a large load tariff. So if we have somebody comes in over 10 megawatts, it allows us to bring them in sooner and quicker because I can go out and do bilateral contracts and I can get it here sooner instead of having the infrastructure at the time. So it'll allow us to compete and to do things that we haven't been able to do when it gets into a growing community.
Mm-hmm. So how did you negotiate those pools, if you will? How does that come online? Who does that, because obviously that's a benefit for our infrastructure here in the main municipality, but is there a consequence downstream for someone else, or how does that mitigate?
No. So when you come into market, you want to take a look at it, is like, what's your resources and what's in that market? Uh-huh. So right now, the Southwest Power Pool has a lot of wind in Kansas, a lot of renewables.
Got it.
On the southern part, you get down into the lower areas there. So we don't have a lot of that right now. Okay. But what we can do is utilize our gas generation fleet and our other fleet to bring those online when those aren't available. So you want to have the right resources for the right cost. So there's times that we're going to be able to make money in a market having types of power that's not available there. So it allows us to utilize our infrastructure better, but it allows us to bring on resources that we don't have. As we start to continue to figure out how to meet the state's decarbonization goals, right, that, for example, will help with that. It'll help us get there without us having to go into long-term contracts that may be too expensive. So those are how that is. So the Southwest Power Pool is very huge. It's a large area. Then you have MISO, which is another market through there. Then you have PGM. So there's a lot of large markets. California has CAISO. So there's a lot of markets out there, and it depends on where you're at in the country. But markets really, at the end of the day, allows flexibility, allows quicker deliverable, types of power options, but it also brings the lowest cost power available in that market to the end users. That's why it helps everybody.
Okay. So when you hear a company that's prospecting and looking at El Paso County as a prospective location for their facility, whether it's a Swire Coca-Cola or a big data center or DoD contractor that's going to draw a lot of power down here, their presumption is, based on what they read in a lot of headlines, is that we're power hungry right now and maybe a little power starved. How would you respond to them, and how would you reframe that conversation in their understanding that we're actually open for business?
Yeah, and I think that's the good point of coming into a bigger pool of markets. So our large load tariff, for example, allows somebody to come in, that hits that sort of large load criteria, say the 10 megawatts and more. So what we do at that point, we can bring in a contract and we can start bringing a reservation fee on, so we can start building and acquiring our resources to take that on at a certain point. So that's what that market participation allows us to do. So it lets us come in, if we have a good company that's coming in that we see as a benefit, that sort of meets what that target is, for our economic development and what our chamber is looking for and what our community is looking for. We can do some creative things now that we weren't able to do before, as of April 1st. Now, we do have to continue to build transmission. Transmission is still, the West is very young when it gets in infrastructure. You don't have a lot of interstates, physical interstates, but there's not a lot of gas pipelines and there's not a lot of transmission. So you start getting, west of mid-Kansas, mid-Nebraska, you start seeing, I think you used the word deprived. We are deprived of large-scale infrastructure. That still has to be resolved. And we're working to resolve that, through our needs and our construction activities, as well as what the market's going to do too in SPP.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to take a break right now, but as you can tell, we got a lot to cover here with Travas Deal, CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Picnic Basket Catering Collective. Call or find us online.
Pain doesn't just announce itself, it changes how you move. And when movement changes, everything else follows. That's when experience and coordination matters most. Dr. Craig Yeager, orthopedic sports medicine surgeon here at Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group, board-certified, fellowship-trained specialists treat the full orthopedic picture from head to toe. With our walk-in express care, advanced MRI and CT imaging, and physical therapy at 2 full-service locations, your care stays connected. Schedule today. Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group, because movement isn't optional, it's personal.
All right, welcome to the second quarter of Business Digest Weekly. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs, here on a Friday afternoon. Glad you're with us. I'm hanging out with Travas Deal, Chief Executive Officer of Colorado Springs Utilities, and I've said to him multiple times, thank goodness you're here, and thank goodness your staff and your entire infrastructure is here, because this is probably one of the most complex business equations I've ever seen. Usually you have a business plan that goes into place and the variables are relatively within control. But when you're dealing with natural resources and other things like that, and then the demand of a population whose technology is changing almost by the minute, you have to be a significant varsity athlete and agile as an organization to make these things happen. So we're very proud and pleased that you guys are here and you're keeping us connected as your logo suggests. So thank you for that. And if you want to learn more information about CSU, if you have any questions about what's going on or how things work, csu.org is your website, and tap into that anytime. And if you have questions, they've got a State of the Utility coming up this summer that I want to make sure you attend, but I'm going to let him tell you about that here in just a minute. One of the hotter topics in the region lately in the news has been the Horizon Power Plant, which was supposed to be planted out near Colorado Springs Airport. One of the great resources we have here in Southern Colorado is that airport. And I want to make sure that people know two things. One, utilize your airport. Greg Phillips, Alex Kovacs' predecessor, used to say, use the daggone airport. And he said it every time. And there's a reason for that, because when we utilize this as Southern Coloradans, when we utilize our airport, we have the ability to maintain those gates, which keeps our revenue engine and our economic engine turning here in Southern Colorado. This is a massive asset. But they also have regulations and other things and other variables that kind of put a handicap on them as to how and where things go. And one of those was the Horizon Power Plant. And I'm going to get it from the horse's mouth today. Travas, I want to give you plenty of room here to unpack the Horizon Power Plant and how everything is going and what happened.
Yeah, yeah. So ideally, we've taken a look at, as community asset, we know natural gas is, we need that. We need more generation.
You bet.
We're talking about.
Yeah.
So, we started taking a look at this, several years ago, and we own property out there by there. So we was like, we'll put the location of the power plant here. It does two things. It was ideally going to be designed to help Peak Innovation Park.
That's right.
Having power generation, close to end users, and an industrial park is always a really good, sales item, when it gets into marketing that. But also the close proximity to Peterson. That was some of the things we were working with them on, is an additional redundancy, coming from that power plant there. But just like you said, the airport is such a key infrastructure. I mean, it is, I know you touched on how important utilities are, but I mean, right there close is our connection to the outside world. So we support the airport and the vitality airport, through and through. So we started taking a look at that, and there was some concerns that was brought up around some of the heat and how that heat reacts to colder area, and it causes, what's considered a thermal plume. And, they brought a panel of experts in, a safety review panel, took a look at it, and it's like, is there mitigating steps? Is there things where you can put the power plant here still, but not put anybody at risk? I mean, we support safety. Safety is a big part of everything we do.
Yes.
So we would never want to jeopardize anything there. So if there was mitigation steps or routes, we would do that. The panel decided that there's still too much risk, with smaller aircraft. So we have other options, just like you said, the complexity. I always usually have plan A through Z. So somewhere I'll find an option that's going to work. So we had another site that is Williams Creek, which is sort of south of the springs here, and it's where our large solar facility is. We have an interconnect there. So we did some air monitoring there too. So we're already actively working with the state to get that air permit done. We've already worked with our developers of who we purchased the power plant from and who's going to be installing it. So a little bit of a delay, of course, but we have some ways to make that up. But we're still going to, have a great asset for the community. We're moving forward, support the airport's, decision. Safety has to be a priority. So I know a lot of people were worried. I was like, well, we won't have power now. We talked about, earlier in this segment there, with the Southwest Power Pole, I have more options now. Mm-hmm. We picked up some contracts, so we're in really good shape. Excellent. Still going to have an asset coming, and we move forward. So
that thermal plume, that's what used to come out of the Drake plant.
It's really heat. So Drake, pretty much anything that has heat, when like we live in Colorado, it gets cold.
Of course.
So, when you get down in the 20s and 30s, you have that turbulence that can happen where you have extreme heat meeting extreme cold. The majority of the year, you don't have that, but you do have that during certain segments of the year. Right. And that's where that thermal, interaction happens. And that's where turbulence was going to happen with smaller aircraft, not the larger ones, but the smaller ones. But like I said, we had other options. So, it wasn't that we had to do something here. Sure. We have other options. Yeah. And so, why put safety at risk if we had another place to put this, and that's where the decision was made. Well,
and some of those other factors that we've talked about that handicap various organizations from doing what they need to do more cost effectively sometimes can be confluencing. But I can tell you this, there's a lot of chatter in the community that it's this organization against this organization. I can tell you that's simply not the case. And Travis, you can speak to that as well. I mean, Alex has competing priorities, as utilities has competing priorities. And so when those competing priorities collide, all right, that's where smart and well-intended individuals come to the table and work the problem. And that's exactly what sounds like happened here.
Yeah, we support the airport wholeheartedly. They got to be a strong organization and safe organization, and we support them. And like I said, we always have other options, and we were able to figure out another plan forward.
Plan B, very good. Well, or C or A or whatever it might be.
Sometimes it gets to Z. That's why I say A through Z. So,
talk to us a little bit about Nixon right now and the Senate bill that's poking at it.
Yeah, so we're still steadily working with Nixon and some of the legislation up there. I mean, we have, I can't thank, Mark Snyder and Amy Pascal enough, both of those on the representative side and Senate. They've been very supportive, and as well as a lot of our other members, to make sure that we actually have the ability to utilize Nixon to help us get through this. So we actually have a power plant that is low cost, very environmentally, safe. I mean, when you start taking a look at, decarbonization, there's a lot of different thoughts and beliefs on that. But at the end of the day, we have a scrubber on, and it's a great plant, maintained very well by a great group of employees down there that's really put their heart and soul into maintaining that. So we want to be able to utilize that for our current customers. You know, as we talk about, we want to always maintain, you know, a cost-effective, you know, approach to what our rates are. And sometimes those are impacted outside of my control. State legislation, different things that the state wants to do can impact that. And there's some groups out there that are big advocates against anything, you know, with carbon in it. Most of those don't live here, you know, so at the end of the day, you know, they're more of a national level, you know, sometimes state and local, but I work for the customers. If you look at what our criteria is, you know, we look at reliability, number one, cost, then we try to do it the most environmentally friendly way we can with that. But you got to have reliable, and you can't price people out. You know, we talk about businesses coming here. Cost of energy is always going to be a deciding factor if a business wants to locate here. So we have to continue to utilize all of our resources we can. I'm in the state of Colorado, operate in the state of Colorado. I understand, you know, the long-term goal to get to a cleaner decarbonization. We're not fighting the end goal. What we're asking for is a more comprehensive, thoughtful approach to utilize resources, the lifetime of those resources. Then when the life transitions, then you transition. Anytime you do an energy transition or some sort of a power transition, when you haven't been able to itemize and use that power for the best benefit, it increases your cost quite a bit. Mm-hmm. You know, I tell everybody drives a vehicle, so I use the analogy a lot of times of vehicles is, you know, just imagine you're driving a car and you have to maintain that car because you got to get to work. Mm-hmm. But on Friday, you're still paying for that car. Well, you can't drive it now. I need you to drive a new car Monday. Well, now you got two payments and you've maintained. Mm-hmm. So what we're asking for is utilize Nixon to help us make sure we have the power we need, the lowest cost we can, and do a smart transition, like going into the SPP, you know, getting transmission built, looking at nuclear. You know, that's the other thing too. You know, we're looking at nuclear as a decarbonization, is basically a non-carbon, you know, base load type of generation. Those are smart transition plans. Being forced into a transition where everybody's doing it at the same time, you lose your cost initiative.
That's correct. Yes.
I mean, you're competing against each other for resources, for parts, for commodity. It is the wrong time. You got to do it in a methodical approach, and that's all I'm asking for from the state with this.
And where's your head at with nuclear right now? That sustainable plan.
Yeah, I think nuclear is, I think a lot of us, you know, grew up in the eras of the Cold War where we was always afraid somebody had their hand on a red button and was going to drop nuclear bombs on us. So I think you know, our generation's still a little worried about nuclear, but nuclear is a very safe generating facility. It's been used forever. You have, you know, lifetime fuel on site. I think for us to get to where our state and others want to get to with a decarbonization future, solar and wind can't carry that in battery. No. You have to have other type. You have to. So I think nuclear has to be that option we look at, and we have to really think about, you know, a longevity. Nuclear right now, you know, you got 60 to 80 years. You know, a lot of these plants are still operating. You know, that's twice the length of a gas plant. That's 3 times the length of a solar facility. So once you invest, you're setting up a long-term base for our community that we're setting in resources that's going to outlive all of us. And it'll set us up for a future that I think we deserve as a community. So we have to look at that.
How far away are we, do you think?
Well, nuclear, the biggest thing with that is permitting. You know, everybody, you know, they got a bunch of red tape wrapped around everywhere.
Sure. Understood.
So I think if we keep the technology where it's serial number 1 and everybody sticks with that, and you run through, where it runs into the safety aspect is when everybody brings in variables, then it's got to go through that whole safety review. But if we look at the technology out there now, and it's tried and true, and you know, we have some help at the federal level on permitting, and get the permitting timelines down, I think it can speed things up. They're no harder to build than anything else. It's usually the permitting and getting through the federal regulation, which is our own doing. So I think a lot of that, you know, that deregulation of some of this or streamlining that and trying to stick to standard packages can speed things up quite a bit. Right now, they're still saying 10 years. So 10 years from start to get online, actually 10 to 12 years. So, you know, for us, we need to be looking at it now, because you have Front Range, which is 500 megawatts. It's probably going to be coming offline in 2040, 2042. So it's not keeping up with the growing community, but we got to have the right technology in place to replace our current generation.
I want to run back to that Senate Bill 26022. That's the one we're
Yes, sir.
dealing with as it relates to Nixon. Where do voters need to understand that bill and what the right step is here?
Yeah, we have a lot of information on our site, csu.org. And really, speaking up, with your representative, wherever you live in the community, is important because, we have to have a bipartisan approach to this.
Correct.
And I think, that's the only way that we can actually find a path forward is everybody's got to put their political side away and think about what's right for our consumers and our customers.
Imagine that.
Yeah, an ideal world, Dirk, ideal world. But I think that information's there, and reach out to our team. We're happy to help and understand that. But the simplicity is we're just asking to utilize an asset that our customers have already paid for a little longer.
Okay.
So
fair enough. Thanks, Travis, for that. All right. When we come back, we're going to get into some water wise rules and the water shortage discussion that is no doubt on everybody's mind. Back with Travas Deal, CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities, in just a moment.
The Picnic Basket Catering Collective. Call or find us online.
Pain doesn't just announce itself, it changes how you move. And when movement changes, everything else follows. That's when experience and coordination matters most. Dr. Craig Yeager, orthopedic sports medicine surgeon here at Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group. Board-certified, fellowship-trained specialists treat the full orthopedic picture from head to toe. With our walk-in express care, advanced MRI and CT imaging, and physical therapy at 2 full-service locations, your care stays connected. Schedule today. Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group, because movement isn't optional, it's personal.
All right, welcome back to the third quarter of Business Digest Weekly here on a Friday afternoon. You are just 90 short minutes away from happy hour, so you're coming in for a landing. Tell the boss I said you're listening to something very important, and you are getting informed and educated on all things utilities. This is one of the rare utility organizations in the United States that oversees four properties. And it's amazing at what they accomplish. It's no surprise to them that they are as effective as they are. But once you understand the depth and breadth and scope of the Colorado Springs utility mission and charge, you would be a lot more graceful in understanding what is going on out there. And I don't say that because they're sitting here. I say it because, our producer just made a comment a moment ago, Travis, that his wife went through a leadership academy. And she saw firsthand what the utilities does and walked out of there literally amazed at the breadth and scope of what you all do every day. And it's an army, it's a fleet of individuals going out there and making sure things are connected and things are delivering as promised and planned. Give a shout out to your team and give us some framework and recognition of the scope that you guys are covering.
Yeah, and I've worked other places, lived other places, but our workforce here at Colorado Springs Utility, I'd put up against any I've ever worked for. These are your friends, your family, your neighbors. They're in your community. They're at the ball fields, and it's a 24/7 job. And they put their heart and soul in it, and they truly feel connected to the community. And they do everything they can to try to deliver these commodities, safely, reliability, and the best cost they can. And I mean, it is, proud of every one of them, and every one of them, what they do, you can't replace. I just get to be the lucky one that gets to work with them. But just seeing that passion that they do for the community is next to none. I think that's what makes, a municipal utility special, is connection to the community. Mm-hmm. But I think this one is a little bit even more with the forest services. It's incredible what they do.
Stormwater?
We don't do stormwater.
Okay, it's wastewater.
Yeah, so electric, gas, water, and wastewater. So pretty much all 4 of those for our community. And we actually serve outside of the Colorado Springs area. So we serve electric and gas outside the city. So we have franchise agreements and serve outside as well. We have outside water service deliveries as well, regional deliveries where we'll treat or convey somebody's water for them. We do the same for gas. So we actually serve outside the city, and a lot of people don't realize that our service territory is actually even bigger. We actually, have electric up through, Green Mountain Falls up through there, up through that whole corridor.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So it's a community asset that we try to bring, a great product to, but none of this can happen without a great group of employees, and we definitely have the best.
Well, and clearly you guys are all flowing in the same direction. So the mission is clear and the directives are clear. So thank you again, all to those folks that are out there making it happen for us. And of course, for the leadership for creating that vision and execution, sir. Thank you. All right. So water shortage or the perception of water shortage, either way, we're in a drought season.
Yes, sir.
And the perception is, oh my goodness, we're probably in for a heck of a fire season. Okay. But where you sit, where utility sits, and where your colleagues sit along the Front Range, where are we at with that?
Yeah, the good thing is those folks, those visionaries that came along before us in Colorado Springs, we built in an arid environment that we all love. I mean, right at the base of Pikes Peak, we're all here because of we want to be. I mean, there's no place like it.
That's right.
But we don't have a lot of water here local. So we have to have a very intricate, water system that takes, from 135 miles in. We have, almost 27 reservoirs we own and operate. But I think that thought way back then and our continued thought that we bring today is, since we know we don't have those water tributaries, invest in storage. And our community has done that for well over 100 years. This is the year that's going to help us, is because, we are in a drought. We have significant snowpack reductions. We're not seeing the moisture, the temperature's up. So we're going to utilize our storage. So that's why you don't see us in as much restrictions as other communities, like in the Denver area, because they're off of tributaries. So ours is we have a lot of storage. So that gives us a little bit of that buffer so we don't have that swing. We are still making sure that, we educate employees that we want to be good stewards of our water. We want to make sure that, we're doing the things we need to without mandatory restrictions, through just voluntary education and understanding. And I think that's the thing is, our community, we've educated people, is we're using the same water now as we did in the 80s. And look how much this community's grown. Wow. So we have a very great, so a thank you to our community and everybody listening. We have a very thoughtful, educated community that is water wise. And, we're going to ask them to continue to do that this year and make sure that we're managing through this drought. And hopefully next year, we'll have a wetter winter and, things will be there. But that investment in our infrastructure that the people before us did is paying off today. And I tell everybody that, and for those that has come to the state of utility, I think that's the ownership I put on myself and our community. And I ask even with our leaders in the community, we have to have that same visionary for our future. We talked earlier about nuclear. We talk about the things we need to invest in because, we're the benefactors of smart investment like our water infrastructure. So we want to make sure that we take those lessons learned and we take that forward. So I do put a lot of ownership that I'm thinking 30, 50, 80, the next 100 years of Colorado Springs Utilities and the city of Colorado Springs.
Because your predecessors thought of your term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you just, you don't ever want to let that down. So, we're taking advantage of that, and I think we're going to be good this year on water. The wildland fire risk is definitely there. We do a lot to manage what our watersheds are, but for the community, listen, to the fire departments, listen to those advisories. Be very careful this year. An involuntary act, whether it's here in the community or if you're fishing or enjoying things up in the mountains there, can really have a lifetime impact, on our community. So it's going to be one of those years we're going to have to be very thoughtful and protect our infrastructure, from fires.
So the combined component, I want to put that in two frameworks: the combined effort of the individual residential home and all the people within. Okay. Everybody there is making a contribution, okay, by using water at the appropriate hours, not on peak times and things like that. Turning light switches off, all that fundamental stuff. Yep. And that aggregate counts, right?
It absolutely
it adds
counts.
up.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Probably more than people even can begin to realize. it allows us to do things. It allows us to keep costs down. But like on a commodity like water, we can't control that. You can't make it. It allows us to do things that keeps our community viable, that we're still able to water, 3 days a week. We're able to do the things we need
Which is incredible to me.
To keep our to keep our community there. And our employees that work at the Conservation Center, if anybody has any questions on that, we have a great group there that can walk you through, your landscape and your choice of grass programs that we have. We have a lot of things at the Mesa Conservation Center that we would love to share with the community if you're more interested around water conservation.
Absolutely. And I would encourage folks to get out there and take a look at that. When people want to utilize water-wise rules, that's a mouthful for me.
Yeah.
Where would you direct them to get a good education about their lawns and everything else? Yeah,
CSU.org has a lot of information on it, so that's the one-stop shop. But when it gets into water-wise in general, or water conservation, and it's actually for energy as well, is at the Mesa Center up off of Mesa up there, close to Garden of the Gods resort and community up there. We can get information out there. We actually have community events like on Saturdays once a month too, where you can learn gardening tips and different things around water. So we have a lot of stuff on there, and our site will take you to all that. And it's a fun thing to help educate yourself, your family, or even have an outing, on a Saturday and go walk through the gardens.
You bet. How about businesses? What's the message you have for businesses?
Yeah, businesses are same way. I think we actually have some audits that we can do. So we've had people call and try to take a look at their system. So we'll do some audits there on water use and energy. And we've saved a lot of businesses money, trying to find things. So same way, our businesses have a great opportunity to reach out to us, and we can come out and try to help and take a look at, how your business is and give you some ideas how to save water.
Okay, very good. Well, I want to give you an opportunity to promote this State of the Utilities coming out. So give us some details on that, when, where, how, who, all that good stuff.
Yeah, the State of the Utilities is coming out. It's in June again, and it is open to the public. We have it at the City Hub, which is another great facility.
That's a great
facility. And the people that operate that is so welcoming, and they do such a great job.
Indeed. But
the State of the Utilities is a chance for us to interact and for us to meet our employees, to learn about programs. Then I usually give a very high level update, for an hour there, and you'll get to see people in the community, get to talk with them. It's a really good networking time too, but we definitely want to make sure everybody's there. Same way, you can go to our site, and that will allow you to RSVP, but if not, you can still show up, sort of first come, first serve there. But the State of the Utility, this is going to be our third year doing it. It's something I wanted to connect with our customers and our stakeholders and our business leaders to share where we're at as a utility. So it'll be a great event.
And that's June 24th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. What time do you guys start?
8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock in the morning at Colorado Springs City Hub, folks. RSVPs are appreciated, but it is an open session, and I do hope you come and understand how we as a collective, as a community, can make an impact, a positive impact on our utilities here in Southern Colorado. Back in a moment with Travas Deal, CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities.
Picnic Basket Catering Collective. Call or find us online.
Pain doesn't just announce itself, it changes how you move. And when movement changes, everything else follows. That's when experience and coordination matters most. Dr. Craig Yeager, orthopedic sports medicine surgeon here at Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group, board-certified, fellowship-trained specialists treat the full orthopedic picture from head to toe. With our walk-in express care, advanced MRI and CT imaging, and physical therapy at 2 full-service locations, your care stays connected. Schedule today. Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group, because movement isn't optional, it's personal.
All right, fourth quarter here, Business Digest Radio. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group. thank you for underwriting this program. We certainly do appreciate you guys, and hopefully you've seen some of their ads rotating through here. Great organization. I know most of the physicians in that practice, and they are absolutely terrific. Wonderful group of folks. Take care of you from start to finish, all the way from first visit all the way through rehab, and it's a very good experience. Trust me. I appreciate Travas Deal coming in and spending some time with us today. He's the Chief Executive Officer at Colorado Springs Utilities. We've covered a lot of ground here today, folks, and I want to encourage you to go back, if you've missed any part of this conversation, to listen to the podcast either on socodigest.com, that's SOCO digest.com, or on Spotify, iHeart, or Apple Podcasts. You can find us at Business Digest Radio. And this is a great insight. And we're going to do this once a quarter with utilities. We're going to have one of their experts come out and talk to us, whether it's Travis or one of your other senior leaders who are lining, as you call them, 4 children, if you will, but all 4 of your services that make sure that we're up and running and connected and flowing as a strong community should. And we appreciate that. The community, probably like the fire department, police department, and ambulance folks, and the hospital folks, they don't always get that appreciation. But utilities is one of those service organizations out there. You've really conditioned your staff to go out there. You are on a mission, and you are in the service industry, and you are executing very well for us, sir, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So I want to give you fair time here to talk about 2 of the other pieces that you guys oversee. That is our wastewater and, of course, our gas distribution system. So let's start with wastewater.
Yeah, wastewater is one of those that is a lot of people don't think about how critical that is. We have other options on some commodities. We can pressurize water, we can move it around, electric, of course, different things. But wastewater is really a lifeblood of our community, and you have to have that to be able to build and grow. And so we're making huge investments into our wastewater infrastructure and sort of building out this area, east of the springs as well as north, in two very large projects. We have a lot of undeveloped property, on the east side of town and expanding out there. And it's really just been limited because we didn't have wastewater infrastructure.
That's
so
right.
We're making a huge investment out there. So wastewater, making sure that our treatment plants and everything's where it's at. It's one of our commodities a lot of people don't think about because our employees do such a great job at it. But that infrastructure is gravity. Most things will have lift stations, so you got to put it in the ground. And when it's not working, that's when things are in a bad way, really bad way. So I'm excited to get that so we can start opening up developable property on the east side of town and work on our capacity on the north side of town. So those 2 areas are a big project over the next 3 to 5 years.
And this is called the wastewater system expansion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a huge one. On the other side too is gas. We're a gas distribution company, and I was like, what does that mean? That we actually purchase gas for our community, from suppliers. We have a great relationship with Kinder Morgan, and we have another contractor that's coming in at Tallgrass. We have the bulk of our systems through Kinder Morgan's gas transmission, but we purchase that gas. Then we take it through distribution system, through gate stations, 5 gate stations to the end user. There's not a lot of flex on either side of that, so it is pretty much pipes. That's the bulk of the system. Well, PHMSA is looking at replacing steel pipes and requiring us to replace steel pipes because they can corrode. If they corrode and get pinholes and gas evaporates, and it's a flammable commodity, and that's where you've seen some safety issues in different areas of the country because of that. So we're being required to replace all of that gas, all the gas distribution, the steel pipes, and we've been trying to negotiate with them to do that, to try to keep price down the best we can. They wanted it done in 5 years, and we asked to give us 10 years. Our system's very safe, but it is something, to try to get ahead of. So we're having to do that now. And as you've probably seen recently, is we're going through a process of a rate increase of a rider to help cover that cost. We're a nonprofit. Anytime you have this, the money has to come from somewhere. But the gas system is going to be going through a major upgrade. But I can't stress our system's safe. We want to make sure that it's as safe as we can now and in the future. And that's where this project's going to be over the next 10 years.
Very good. Laying that foundation for the next
sir.
generation. It's a common theme at CSU. And if you want more information or to understand how the utilities works here in Southern Colorado, whether you're a site selector or a resident, go to csu.org. All right, back at it. Travis, tell us a little bit about the perception of Southern Colorado or Colorado in general right now is that we're not terribly business friendly. Yeah. Okay. Now we've got a lot of good people working a different message on that because in fact, we are very business friendly. Yeah. We do have a lot of legislative overload right now, a lot of legislative burden on businesses that's pushing on everything, including utilities. So understand that in the greater context, when you're talking about anti-development, just stone cold anti-development, what you're saying is we're going to stop growing, and a community that stops growing. Well, folks, there's a lot of cautionary tales throughout the United States of communities that have literally dried up. Now, that's not what's happening today here in Southern Colorado, but what we do is we have organizations out there that are forecasting, looking down at the future of the resources we have, the agreements we're making for futures and other components, and we're building our future together. Now, nobody will argue irresponsible development is not a good thing. We are all working on smart development, and utilities is always at the table when these conversations are happening with business development experts and bigger companies that want to plant their flag here in Southern Colorado. That means jobs for us. That means taxpayers, a tax base, if you will, to help keep our cost at a relative norm. So please understand the greater economic equation as it relates to some of these anti-development conversations that are happening out there, and try to better understand what's driving that and what's motivating that, rather than just summarily taking that and saying, yeah, that's a good idea, don't build. No, what we have to do is build smart. And that's what we're all trying to do together. If you had 2 minutes or 3 minutes in a room with site selectors around the country from any industry, aerospace, defense, cyber, quantum, what would you tell them about the state of our utilities and the confidence level you have in what we're doing here?
Yeah, I think the first thing, the biggest advantage we have, and we've heard that from, our recent development, Swire and others, that the ability for us to have 4 services and then work with one endpoint is a huge advantage.
It's unreal.
So I think as, these site selectors and business take a look, taking a look at that is, we can do more and quickly than other customers, other utilities can, from that ability to be very agile, with the 4 services. We're very aggressive and I'm being very looking way out to make sure we have the resources that you can invest confidently here, that we're staying ahead. We have what we need. So we're for sure open for business. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think the misconception is that it's a small municipal utility, so they can't, we may be a small municipal utility in some folks' eyes, but the agility we can do, the innovation that we do every day, and the long-term planning that we do is going to be different than they're going to find in other communities.
Right on.
So I definitely encourage them to speak with us and take a look at that. And it gets into, I think there's a lot of concern too, within the community when you hear some of this anti-development segment, is that if the rates are going up because of it. And it's not. We have places in play. Development does pay for development. Whether it's, we have a great organization in the community, with our HBA, our builders out there, they pay for the developments. They're putting in that infrastructure, and it's really no different than businesses as well. Mm-hmm. We have things that we can do through our large load tariff that can bring in some of these hyperscalers and insulate our customers from. A lot of people don't realize we have those abilities. So we can really take a look at it and cater. Our city council that sits as our utility board, since it makes us very agile that way too. We can get stuff approved very quickly, and we have a very great organization, and we have a great supporting cast, of our city council utility board that allows us to do what we need to do to bring in the right businesses here. You hear a lot of talk around affordable housing. So my philosophy is, you can always take a look at how to get home prices down, or you can support the community of bringing in jobs, high-paying jobs where people can actually compete and afford for those homes. Excellent. So there's 2 ways to get to that. Right. So that one we can control. Mm-hmm. Everything else, people want to live here, so you're always going to be competing. But how do we get our community where we have more jobs? We have our defense industry here is huge.
Yes.
But how do we get more multifaceted? How do we bring in a more diverse, industry, to make sure we have all of these segments? So if you're looking at Colorado Springs utilities, we have a great area, beautiful views, recreation. We have a community that supports what we're doing here, and we're building for the future at a faster pace than most cities are.
And when a site selector and other stakeholders from organizations come in, they're going to meet with you and other executives in the region to understand how that plug-in actually happens, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So see, folks, there's a lot of misperception out there, and we understand where the sentiment comes from to preserve our natural resources and other things. But Travis, I want to thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of misperception and a lot of misconstrued data out there. And I would just continually encourage people to look into your EDC, look into the City of Colorado Springs, and of course, Colorado Springs Utilities at csu.org. Get informed. Get an understanding of how all of this is interplaying together, because there's a lot of moving pieces out there, folks. And we're building a community for the future. As you could tell a number of times, you said you're building foundations upon which we will not walk on, right? That's our kids and their kids that'll be walking on that. So these folks are looking forward. They're building out generations of sustainability for Southern Colorado. And I, for one, and I know I speak for a large portion of the business community and the residential community, say thank you to CSU, your leadership and vision, and of course, all the folks out there on the front line making sure it all works together. They are what's keeping us connected here in Southern Colorado, folks. Sorry, I had to say it, Travis.
Oh, yeah. But, we're all connected.
It's how we're all connected. But thank you, Travas Deal, CEO for Colorado Springs Utilities, for being here. We appreciate your insights and expertise and your heart and your passion. I remember you saying in the article we did a couple years ago with you that, I sit in that corner office and I look down there and I say, I'm responsible for all of those people making sure everything works. And I just appreciate your heart on that.
Very much so.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening in to Business Digest Weekly this week. If you missed the full show, go to Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcast, or socodigest.com to pick up this full transmission. It is a great education on all things utilities. See you next week.
You've been listening to Business Digest Radio, Colorado's source for business, workforce, and economic development news. Find us on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and at socodigest.com. To be featured on the show, email info@coloradomediagroup.com.